Hey y'all, so you want to pull a travel trailer, but you don't know where to start. I'm going to give you Dad's top 3 pieces of advice on what you need to be thinking about before you buy the travel trailer. Number 1. So Dad's first piece of advice is to get comfortable with a thing called payload. So as you think about what you're going to be pulling and what you're going to pull it with, you're going to be tempted by manufacturers' numbers of the towing capacity of the vehicle. For example, you're going to see a commercial on TV for a new Ram truck and it's going to boast about the towing capacity being 15,000 pounds or whatever the number is. You need to largely ignore that number and focus on payload. Payload is basically the amount of weight that you're going to be putting onto the rear of your tow vehicle. And that's important because you're going to run out of payload long before you get anywhere near the towing capacity that the truck can pull. For example, I've got a 2022 F-150 and Ford will tell you that the towing capacity of that truck is 11,600 pounds. That's a heck of a lot of weight. I'm tempted to think with that number that I can pull a 10,000 pound trailer. I really can't though because I'm going to run out of payload. For example, my travel trailer, the payload, the tongue weight of the trailer is about 500 pounds. That's the amount of weight that the trailer, when it's put on the ball of the receiver, the hitch receiver on the truck, is going to exert onto the truck's rear axle and suspension, about 500 pounds. So I need to know what my payload is on the truck. That's much more important to me than my towing capacity. The payload on my truck is 1,662 pounds. So right away, I know that of that 1,662, when I get hitched up, my trailer is going to eat up 500 pounds of that. That's really important to know because that tells me how much weight I've got left on the truck, and I certainly don't want to max it out. So when I add 4 people, a dog, a grill, any other stuff in the back of the truck, I've only got, 1,162 pounds to work with. And I'm usually quite good with that, but you got to be mindful of payload versus towing capacity. Don't be tempted by towing capacity. So you may be asking, Dad, how do I find out the payload of a given truck? You really are going to have great difficulty finding that information online because it's going to vary from one vehicle to another. In fact, almost every truck out there is going to have a different payload number depending on the options that it has. I mentioned that I'm running a 2022 F-150. It's a Lariat package. Those tend to have a little less payload than an XLT or an XL because they've got more bells and whistles, and those bells and whistles take up weight. They weigh things, so they put extra weight on the suspension. So if you're shopping trucks or you want to know what the payload is of your current vehicle, the best place to go is the door sticker. Open up your driver's door and find the label there that's going to give the information. It's going to tell you something along the lines of the weight of occupants and cargo should not exceed X pounds. And you can see here on the F-150, that's 662 pounds that I referenced earlier. That's really the best place to find what the payload number is for a given vehicle, the door sticker on the vehicle. If you're shopping vehicles from afar, don't be shy to ask your salesperson who you've connected with over the phone. If you're looking at a particular truck on a lot, send him out to take a photo and to text you a photo of the payload sticker on a given truck. If it's too low, you don't want that truck. Better to know that before you drive 2 hours to that car lot. So Dad's next nugget of advice for the guy who is starting to get into towing a travel trailer is think about tires. Yes, tires. So when you hitch a 6,500 pound trailer to the back of your truck, you're exerting forces onto that truck that are not there when you're not pulling something. It changes the dynamics of the truck in a whole new way. Most light duty trucks, such as my F-150, come standard with passenger load rated tires. What that means is they're the same kind of tire construction that you'd find on an Accord or a Camry, and most often they're just not up to snuff to pulling a heavy trailer. What I'm running are E-load rated tires. They're going to have a much stiffer sidewall. They can carry much more load before they start enduring stress. And you can run them at varying tire pressures without affecting the safety factor of the tire. In other words, on these E-load rated tires that I'm running, I can reduce the pressure for my day-to-day driving, just going to the grocery store, dropping kids off at school, that sort of thing, and still be in a safe place of tire pressure and inflation. And then I can raise the pressure in them when I'm pulling to give a more rigid ride, a more rigid structure to that tire, and be in a good place in both scenarios, and know that I've just got a lot of tire underneath me for really rough roads. And one thing that you'll figure out really quickly when you're towing is just how bad a given road is. A road that you won't notice that there's anything wrong with it when you're not pulling something. You'll think that you're, driving down, riding a wooden canoe down a log pile. That's what it's going to feel like when you're towing. And so you want a tire that can really withstand those challenges. So on the F-150, like I said, it came with your standard passenger load rated tires that were just too squishy for the task of pulling my trailer. I've upgraded to these Cooper Discoverer AT3s. They're E-load rated, they are mud and snow rated, and they've got the little symbol for a snow tire, the little mountain snowflake. You can see as he pans there, they're mud and snow, and you'll get to a place where you see that little E in a circle. That tells you they're an E-load rated tire. Highly recommend this tire. It's got a fairly good all-terrain tread pattern on it. They're not mud tires, but that's not what you want when you're towing. But they do give you a little more confidence on Forest Service roads and just a little bit more of an aggressive tread pattern than you'd find on a light truck tire. You'll also notice when he panned there, you saw LT in the numerical description of the tire size. That LT is important. That tells you it's a light truck tire, which again is a more robust, a stiffer, better constructed tire than a passenger rated tire, a passenger car rated tire. So highly recommend the Coopers. Go with Coopers.
Cooper! And never start something you can't stop.
Something about this guy is weird.
Yeah, I see it too, but I can't quite put my finger on it.
Wait, I think I know what it is.
I got it. I got it too. He's not subscribed to the channel. Subscribe!
So Dad's last piece of advice when you're thinking about getting into pulling a travel trailer is you need to give a lot of thought to your hitch system. You may be tempted to think that I'm going to buy a travel trailer and I'm going to go down to AutoZone and just buy a ball, stick it on the back of my truck, and plop the trailer down onto it and take off. You really need to put a lot more thought into that for the safety of your family and for the safety of everybody else on the road. So my intent here is not to scare you. However, a little fear is a good thing when you're pulling a trailer. It can get scary and it can get dangerous really quickly. And every time we go somewhere, we see people pulling trailers in setups that are just far too dangerous for the safety of the people in that truck and the people around them. Don't be that guy. Depending on the size and the weight of your trailer, you may be perfectly fine to pull it with a good quality hitch receiver and ball setup. I highly recommend WaySafe hitches. They have a built-in scale that gives you a pretty good approximation of your tongue weight, and they're made out of quality components, and you can switch out the ball sizes on them to suit different coupler sizes. However, if you get into a trailer that's got any weight to it, you're going to want to give a lot of consideration to a weight distribution hitch. What that does is it takes the tongue weight of your trailer and through physics sends a portion of it to the front of your tow vehicle so that not all of that weight is being borne by the rear axle. Some of it through physics is being shifted to your front axle. hence the name weight distribution hitch. It's distributing the weight of your trailer, your tongue weight, across your vehicle more equally. It's a safer setup. What we've done with our F-150 is get a weight distribution hitch that we really like. It is an additional cost. It is something you need to be thinking of. In our case, ouch, it's an additional $1,000 on top of the cost of the trailer, which was already expensive. And then all the other gear you've got to get from the standpoint of water lines and sewer hoses and camping chairs and all the stuff that you need to do this. It hurts, but it's worth investing in for the safety of you and your family and everybody else on the road. So in my case, we've gone with a weight distribution hitch from a company called Recurve. I think it's a Camco product. We've been extremely happy with the Recurve. Essentially what this does is you've got a really robust receiver here. You're going to back that up to the coupler on the trailer. You're going to lower the coupler onto the ball. After you've got it hitched in the traditional sense of putting the coupler on the ball, you then are going to use these weight distribution bars. In this particular setup, they come down into that cylindrical opening, lock in, and then they fold back and connect to this point on the tongue. The pin on this bar is going to slide into here. It's going to become secure and locked, and it's going to take a portion of the weight of the trailer and distribute it towards the front of the truck, giving you a much more balanced setup. This setup also has sway control, and when semis are blowing by you on the interstate, you're going to really appreciate the stability that the weight distribution and the sway control give you. Really highly recommend a weight distribution hitch if you're pulling a travel trailer of any decent size, something that is sleeping more than 2 people. You really want to consider the weight distribution hitch. So as a little bonus element, a little cherry on top, in addition to the weight distribution hitch, we have added to this truck a Timbren system. To call it a system might be a stretch. Essentially, on your rear axle, you're going to have some factory bounce stops that sit right above the axle. They're there in case you get so much of a bounce or so much load on your rear end that your axle is in jeopardy of coming into contact with parts of the frame of the truck or the underbelly of the truck, if you will. The Timbrens are essentially extended bounce stops that are heavier duty, denser rubber, and they actually come into contact with the axle on purpose when the trailer is hitched to the truck. And what they do is they give that rear axle a bit of a cushion that absorbs shocks, absorbs bumps, and gives you just a little bit more stability on that rear axle as you're going down the highway. Highly recommend Timbrens, Timbren is the name of that company. Check them out. So those are Dad's top 3 nuggets of advice when it comes to thinking about pulling a travel trailer. I guess I should back up as well and say, if you're thinking about pulling a travel trailer, stop thinking about it and hatch a plan and do it. You will have 0 regrets. It's one of the best decisions that me and my family ever made. It's a hell of a lot of fun. Just do it safely and be thinking about every next step.